Hello and welcome. Today I want to share how I make a junk journal or art journal out of an old book cover. So I have shown this process before, and I'll link to my playlist of my journal making videos, excuse me. But anyway, I am using this book cover, which I have already gutted. As you can see, I just use a sharp craft knife and cut out the text block and use all the pages inside. And then I usually trim this up a little bit, and I'll do that now. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just catch any stray pieces sticking out like that. Do it from this side. And that's really fine. I am not fussy about making my journals because some I take more care than others, but this one, is already in a kind of old distressed book, so it's going to be very casual distressed already. But having said that, I want to reinforce the spine because it's not in great condition. If it was in better condition, I would probably leave it. And actually, I probably could leave it and it would be fine too, but I'm going to reinforce it nonetheless on the inside. And I'm going to glue this piece of cardboard or packaging. I just got this off of a cookie box and I'm just going to glue it on here. It's fairly flexible. It doesn't have to be too thick. You could go thicker if you want to. You could use some any kind of packaging, but also you could use cardstock or something like that, maybe scrapbook paper. So that just reinforces the spine a little bit, so it's going to hold up better. And then after that, I'm going to cover it with some tape. I have some kind of wide tape, masking tape that I like to use, but I'm going to probably use 2 strips, one here and one here, just to make sure it's all covered. I think this protects it a lot and it's going to last for quite a while. And then I am going to, on the outside, I've pulled out some fabrics that match this piece that I'm going to put on the cover. I made this last week for my Mixed Media Emporium Facebook group, and I decided that it just fits this little book cover perfectly, so I'm going to use it on here. I'm just going to glue this on top at the end. But first, before I do any of that, I'm going to reinforce the spine. I'm not going to worry about the outside yet. I'm going to add one of these fabrics, I'll decide later, to also cover the spine. And then I'm going to find some scrapbook paper to cover the front and back cover. You'll see all that as I get to it, but I just wanted to introduce what I'm making. I have my tape, I have my top, and this piece is going to be put on probably last or close to last. I have some glue. I like to use Fabri-Tac glue for this sort of thing. It's very strong, good glue to use. I think that's all that I need for the moment. I'm going to, I always say fast forward, but it's speed up the video as I'm working on this project. One thing I did want, I'll say this while I'm working. Okay, while I'm gluing, I'll mention that the piece I'm gluing to the front cover is something I made for the Mixed Media Emporium Facebook group prompt from last week. I did not record a video for that though, but that's why I made that piece. And then for this week, the prompt for the Mixed Media Emporium group is recycle, repurpose, and reuse, or use your scraps. So that's what this project is for, that prompt, because I'm recycling or reusing this book cover to make this little journal. So if you're interested in joining the Mixed Media Emporium Facebook group, I'll leave a link below. But make sure that you answer all the membership questions. Okay, I'm attaching my masking tape to the spine area, and I'm adding extra glue because I want to make sure that this spine, this book, is really sturdy, and it should, last for many, many years. Making sure that you pay attention and press those creases where the front and back covers open and close. That's important to do that on the outside and the inside of your journal. I'm trying to figure out which fabric I want to use, and I thought originally I was going to use the same fabric on the inside spine and the outside, but I do change my mind later, as you'll see. But for now, I decided to use that gray one. It's a busy woven piece that I'm going to have on the cover, so I decided that I would use a more subtle pattern and not quite as competing with the busyness on the outside. That was my idea anyway. So I've already glued my fabric. I actually used a glue stick, which I didn't record. I guess I was recording, but I didn't. Again, making sure your fabric is pressed into those creases. I moved the fabric over because I wanted that pattern that you see there in the middle of the spine. Even though you won't see it that much once I sew in my pages, I still moved it over, and I wish I had paid closer attention to that. But sometimes when I'm recording, I move quicker than I probably should. So you can see there how the Fabri-Tac glue, because this is a thin fabric, shows through, and that's why I use my glue stick for attaching the fabric. But I wanted to make sure those corners were attached well, so I just went ahead and used the Fabri-Tac glue on those. Now I have picked out a piece of scrapbook paper to cover up the front and back covers, inside covers. I have always said, and it's true, that I don't like to measure, so this is how I measure. I'm going to cut 2 pieces of paper based on my pencil line, and as you can see there, I think it's a pretty good, decent job. This has always worked for me, but if you like to measure things to get it more accurate, then please, by all means, do measure. I'm back to my Fabri-Tac glue to attach that scrapbook paper. Now this paper is a pretty substantial weight, so that I can cover the fabric and the back cover nicely, and I think it gives it just a more polished look. I do the same thing on the other inside cover, and so my inside's pretty much finished. Now I decided I'm going to use fabric on the outside, and again I looked at that fabric. I thought I was going to use it, and then I changed my mind, so I decided to go with the blue fabric, which you'll see in a moment, and I trim a piece of fabric to fit the outside spine. This is how I do things usually with fabrics and things like that. I don't measure a lot. I just eyeball it and tear it. I like the torn look. Of course, you can cut it if you like a neater look than that. So again, I'm going to use my glue stick because it's a thin fabric. It's the same thickness as the inside spine fabric, and I don't want that Fabri-Tac glue to show through. Now I'm making sure I put a lot of glue, and especially in those creases, as I mentioned before, and I'm pretty confident with my glue stick. This particular brand, I've never had any problems with it, but I know a lot of people are not so confident when using about using a glue stick for these purposes. So please use whatever glue that you would like to use. The other thing is I am going to sew in the signatures so the fabric is not going to fall off. And if I ever need to, if the edges come off or start coming off or something like that, I can always add more glue because this is my journal. And if I was, giving it away or selling it, maybe I would do something differently. But I'm going to use some Fabri-Tac glue on those edges and corners because those always seem to need a bit of extra enhancement. So these are the papers that I've picked for my signatures. I trimmed them all down. See how quickly I'm moving? I just tore them. You can see they have torn edges to fit the inside of my book. I, again, like that look. You, of course, could cut them much neater. You can measure. I just eyeball everything. I have papers of different sizes because I like that look. And so I'm just aligning all of my papers, and I will paper clip them so that I can start the binding process. I am going to do a 3-hole pamphlet stitch. So I'm aligning my papers in a way that one I think looks good, and those smaller pieces hopefully will be bound in by at least 2 of the holes. That's my hope anyway. Again, this journal really will be sturdy enough for my purposes, and I also don't mind adding like extra tape and things like that if if things start falling apart inside or coming apart inside my art journals. It's going to be a messy art journal, so it's not something that has to be perfect. I don't ever make things that are perfect anyway. So I have my 3 signatures ready. I have made a template for my to use for binding. It should be the same height as your spine and papers, mostly your papers really, and then the same width as your spine. So I usually, again, don't want to measure, so I take my template and I fold it in half to get my midpoint, and that's where my middle signature is going to be. If the spine was wider, I usually do a lot more folding to get the spot where the 2 other signatures are going to go on either side of the middle. But because this one is so narrow, I have to resort to measuring. So I just measure on each side, the space on each side of the middle, and then make a mark where the other 2 signatures are going to go. That's what I'm doing right now. I did decide to draw the middle line with my pencil because it was hard to see. So I'm marking again where I'm going to put the first and third signatures, and then I draw a line. I already know where the middle hole is going to be. I draw a line for my first and third signatures. Because it's a 3-hole pamphlet stitch, I need 3 holes. So I have my center hole, or spot where the center hole will be, and then I'm going to measure from the top. For this one, I believe I do 3/4 of an inch, or do I do an inch? No, let's see. I can't see. Yeah, 3/4 of an inch. I usually do anywhere between a 1/2 inch or 1 inch from the top and bottom, depending on the size of my journal. This is a small one, so I thought 3/4 of an inch was good. I'm just marking where I'm going to punch my holes. I know I'm going through this pretty quickly, but you can look up 3-hole pamphlet stitch, and there's tons of videos out there showing the process maybe a little slower and explaining it a little bit more clearly. I have other videos in my playlist where I go through this a little more clearly, but basically I'm going to punch my holes in the spine, and then I'm going to punch my holes in each of the signatures. Now, with fabric, it tends to want to close up very quickly after you punch the holes, so I like to usually punch the holes in the spine through the fabric 2 or even 3 times sometimes to make sure that the holes are clearly visible. So that's what I'm doing there. It's sometimes really hard to see those holes. So I'm going to start sewing in, I have to punch the holes in each signature. So using the same template, I usually mark the top of the template to make sure I get it going the right way. But again, moving very quickly. I have this gray waxed thread. Waxed thread is the best kind to use in my opinion. But that's not always necessary, but most of the time I think it is. So I have discovered these blunt-edged needles, bookbinding needles from John Neal Books, and man, do I love these. I don't know why I didn't know about these before, but first of all, they have a large hole, as you can see there, so threading them is so easy. And secondly, I don't catch my thread or split my thread when I'm sewing in the signatures. I don't know if it's just me or what, but I haven't had that problem as much or really at all since I started using these needles. And also, I don't prick my fingers as I often do with the sharp edge needles that I used to use. So I'm doing, again, the stitching of the pamphlet stitch, and I'm not going through the explanation. The main thing again is not to split your thread when you're coming through the holes like that. And then I'm going to tie that up, and I'm going to sew in my other two signatures, and I will be almost finished with this project. Okay, I'm finished with my little book, but the last thing I need to do is add this piece here. Now, usually I have a closure on my books, but on this one I decided not to, so I'm going to just kind of eyeball this and center it somewhat. If you didn't have something like this, or you could use something different, this is fine just like this, I think. So I'm definitely using my Fabri-Tac glue. And I'm going to put, now you can see my ugliness on the back. I need to trim some of those threads, but they're not gonna show. So I thought I had trimmed these already, but okay. So I am going to put a lot of glue back here. I want this to stick fairly well. I'm going to have gluey fingers again. There we go. I think that's enough. I tend to overdo it with the glue many times. Okay, I just want it to go to the edges. And again, eyeballing. Do I have it in the direction I want to go? It could be upside down, but I think it's fine. Again, eyeball. And let's open this up. I'll do a little flip through and so we can press down. Try to get some of the glue off my fingers. And then press. The great thing about this glue is that it sets quickly. It's still probably a little wet, but it's doing great. Make sure I want the edges to... Okay, so hopefully my paint is dry. Okay. I'm happy with that. So I'm going to put my glue away. And I'll do a little quick little flip through of my journal. I still need to press that down on the edges a bit. Let's give it another minute here to really dry and set. Oops. Okay, now, one thing about this journal is you can see that it looks a little not full, but when I like to use a lot of papers and collage, so it will expand, trust me. So let's just see how our little journal looks. I love it. I love the way it turned out. It's lovely. So second signature and the third signature. How pretty that paper is. And that is that. So another thing you could do is you could add pockets on the backs of this if you want to. I thought that I might add an eyelet here and do some ribbon closure, but I think I'm going to leave it like this for now. Still making sure. So there is my little journal. I hope you enjoyed this really quick tutorial. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.